Well, good morning, everyone. I don't know if they are on, Ken. I don't know if they are. Oh, no, now they are. Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. It's 11:32. We're currently in the pre-commission portion of our meeting today. I just wanted, for the president's report, I just wanted to highlight that we're going to be discussing access management as our first policy workshop as a commission, and we'll be having at least one work session on the topic. And I'll be working with staff to hear their thoughts and suggestions about what's hard to maneuver, what their suggestions are for us to consider. And so my request of the commission is, if you have any suggestions, policy corrections or adjustments that you'd like to make, or just questions that you want us to explore in those work sessions, I would appreciate that conversation, and I can prepare that ahead of time. So that's all I have for now. Any other questions? Commissioner Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll look at that and give you some input on some experiences I have in my district. I also just want to say kudos to our staff who are working with the East End Neighborhood Association. I understand they met last night. I don't know any of the details, so I just asked for a briefing if I could get it from, I think Seth Jarsky's the lead on this, as soon as possible, so I could kind of see what has transpired and we can move from there. Thank you.
Okay. So then, are there any general issues? I'm moving on to housekeeping items. Are there any issues commissioners like to bring up or schedule for a future discussion? All right. Are there any questions about the items on today's agenda?
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
I think this will be appropriate at the beginning of our regular meeting, but I am going to request that items 2 and 6 from the consent agenda be removed and put on the regular agenda for at least a brief discussion on those items.
Is there a problem from having that discussion now versus then?
If they're part of the regular agenda, they would normally, I would presume they would be discussed at that point during the regular meeting.
We could have it either way. I'm just wondering, we have time, so.
If the staff is here to deal with these items, I'm happy to discuss them now. I just want to make sure that the discussion that we have is on the record and so on.
Okay, well.
So if that can be done now, I'm happy to have that discussion now, if there's time for it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
What are your questions?
Then the item number 2 from the consent agenda is the supplemental agreement for pavement preservation phase 3 on, and I do not know how to pronounce this name, Resseguie Street. Resseguie Street. Okay, there we go. So I don't know if we've got someone who can discuss that. I guess I have several questions about this. I'm looking at, this first strikes me, we're spending $52,000 because there are some dates stamped on some curbs. And I want to, find out what am I missing and get a complete explanation of what's going on here. So whoever can tell me about that, I would appreciate that.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, for the record, Justin Lucas, Deputy Director of Planning and Projects here at the Highway District. I will do my best to answer questions. We also have Rachel Spear, who's the project manager on this project, who's here. If we get into some process questions, I'm sure she's going to be able to handle those. But I'm glad to start with high-level questions about the why behind this, if you'd like to.
Well, first let's start with the what.
Yeah.
I mean, what my understanding is that we've got 12 locations in this neighborhood where the dates of construction, I believe, of some curbs were stamped on the curbs themselves. Is that all it is, or is there something else?
Commissioner McKinney, Madam President, yeah, there are concrete stamps that exist. These are deemed historic concrete stamps along this segment of Resseguie Street.
Okay, and that's all it is. So stamped by whatever concrete company put it in whatever year. When were these put in place?
Yeah,
1920s or something? Before that?
Yeah, so Commissioner McKinney, early 1900s
Okay.
are when most of the stamps were placed. Typically, the stamps are of different design. They contain a date. Oftentimes, they also contain the name of the contractor who placed the stamp.
Okay, okay. I think I have, I think I have a picture in my mind. I've seen those sorts of things before. But I guess my question is, and maybe part of this I have to, apologize, is kind of a rant against some of the ridiculous laws that we have, because it strikes me that to the extent that these are of cultural value, well, first of all, who was it that made the determination that these have cultural value such that all of these steps need to be taken? How was that determination made?
I'll let Rachel step in here. She can kind
Okay.
of go through the process that we went through to get to this point. And I just will say it's a federal aid project, and so this is money that we are seeking through the Compass process, through our pavement preservation and ADA process. So when we go into that process, it does trigger other requirements and coordination with ITD, and then Rachel can go into some of the specifics on the other organizations that we
Okay.
coordinate with.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
President Pickering, Commissioner McKinney. This, as Justin mentioned, the project does have federal funding, which requires following the NEPA environmental process. So the first step of that process was conducting a cultural scan. So ITD and SHPO, the State Historical Preservation Office, then deemed these 12 concrete stamps historical. So then that requires us by federal law to identify the mitigation for the adverse effects that our project is going to have on these stamps.
Okay. And so what kind of mitigation is required?
We don't know yet. That's what the supplement is for, to work with SHPO and ITD to determine the mitigation.
Okay. But we do know we're replacing these curbs, correct? That's pretty much understood from the beginning that these aren't going to survive.
Correct.
Okay. So, I mean, and I have to admit, maybe I'm looking at this in a simplistic way, but it seems to me you get one historian with a camera who takes one day and goes down and takes pictures of all of them. And then during construction, two guys with a flatbed truck and a concrete saw cut out these historical concrete impressions, take them off to whatever museum or state historical office, and construction goes forward. And it strikes me that, maybe I'm too simplistic in this regard, but why does any of that justify $50,000 of additional expense? That's why I'm kind of boggled by this.
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, General Counsel, Commissioner McKinney, this is something that we face not just on federal aid projects, but also on any project that requires us to get a 404 permit. That engages NEPA, and NEPA essentially requires that we identify through the assistance of the Idaho State Historical Society, SHPO, to evaluate those. Now we've had a lot of these. In fact, Whitewater Park, there was Crane Creek, which is a historic creek basically, that a farmer had lined the ditch with stones. And SHPO had determined that the placement of the stones was historic. And so we had negotiated with SHPO as well as the Corps of Engineers to put up a kiosk that recognized the historic value of that ditch. It typically isn't onerous, but in some ways it's still recognizing, preserves the historic value and allows the public to witness that. I suspect that we may not have kiosks, but we may have some way to preserve the stamps in the concrete, or at least recognize in all those locations. It isn't completely onerous. We've had typical on State Street, we had one where there was a 2x12 that acted as a diverter on an irrigation ditch, and that was deemed to be valued a historic asset, and we've had to do that. It's something that's required by federal law. We can call it ridiculous if you want, but it's a requirement. We don't look at it. We look at it as this is what the law requires, and we're required to comply. And that's what we're doing in this case.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, well, you know, and like I say, as I said, this is kind of, okay, preserving one piece of lumber, that really strikes me as ridiculous. This isn't quite as ridiculous as that,
Commissioner-
but it's still kind of in that ballpark. And so okay, yeah, I guess, you know, it sounds like it's the kind of thing that we can't do anything about, but let me just kind of voice my displeasure at having to spend that much money for something that is really quite trivial. I mean, this isn't Pompeii or ancient Rome or something. These are not historical artifacts from some long-gone civilization. I mean, there are people alive today who were probably around when those curbs were put in place by a concrete contractor, and the stamp was intended to advertise. And we put a date stamp on every bridge parapet that we build. So in 50 years, when we go to replace bridges that we built just within the last 20 years, are we going to have to do this same kind of rigmarole with each of those? It kind of goes far. Anyway, thank you for your explanation. I appreciate it.
Commissioner McKinney, did you have another question about another item?
I did have on item number 6, and I think, and I had a discussion with Ryan earlier and some of the people from the traffic department talking about the leading pedestrian interval and implementing that. And I guess the long and short of it was, I don't know if Ryan is here, the long and short of our discussion was that the 2 full-time employees that they're requesting, they were intending to request a year from now. And maybe I'll let just Ryan explain that.
Sure. Madam President, Commission, Ryan, for the record, Ryan Head, Deputy Director, Development and Technical Services. So your staff at this point in time, there's 3 staff that already has more work than they can do. We were at a point of request where we would have been requesting additional positions even next year. With the added work of the LPI project, we believe the 2 FTE is really the minimum we need in order to work to implement that project and meet the needs of the current staffing.
Thank you, Ryan.
So yeah, and let me just say this. My questions to Ryan had to do with, do we really need 2 full-time employees just to implement the leading pedestrian interval project? And in discussing it, that's when the discussion turned to, well, we need additional staff anyway, and they'll be doing this as well as other things. So I guess in the final analysis, I'm okay with this. It sounds like we need it. I was trying to figure out why just the leading pedestrian interval needed 2 employees by itself. It doesn't sound like that it completely does. It sounds like the department in general needs 2 additional employees, and we're going to seek them in any case. So, but I just wanted the whole commission to have all of that information before we go forward on that. So, thank you, Ryan.
Commissioners, any other questions about today's agenda? Okay, thank you. Director.
Madam President, Commissioners, good morning. Great to have you here again. A couple things, and maybe something just a little differently. First off, I'd like to let you know that the May in Motion campaign kicked off today. We have 45 businesses already signed up, which is well ahead of where we were last year for this. So we're looking for just a tremendously successful campaign culminating in June. I sent you all a quick note this morning. I'd like to elaborate just a little bit on that note. As you are all aware, there has been several 2 major bank failures across the globe, which has been sensationalized, my terms, by a lot of the news media as to an amazing crisis that's going on. That being said, I sat down with our finance team and our treasurer earlier today just to review where we are when it comes down to the investments that ACHD's made in the banking organizations that we do business with. I'm very confident in letting you know that there are absolutely no issues at all with ACHD investments, ACHD banking structure, ACHD partners in this. We don't expect that to occur. That being said, our treasurer will be watching this very, very closely, and if there is something that does come up which we do not expect and such, I will make sure that you're all aware of it. I want to just make sure you all know we're watching this, and ACHD is very solvent when it comes down to both investments and all banking operations. Earlier this week, as we briefed a little bit earlier for you, Sherry met with Boise YMCA. As you know, we are implementing a new wellness opportunity for our team members to provide a $30 per month stipend so that our team members, as opposed to being corralled into just a very small amount of options for physical fitness and wellness, they get to make a choice across the board. We are working with the YMCA downtown and to see what type of corporate rates we can get. I think we're close. There's a little bit more of a discussion that has to go on, but Sherry has done a tremendous job. I would not be surprised here in the very near future where we will be able to cover the YMCA memberships for our team. So that is a huge step. We've never been able to do this before. So I wanted to make sure you were aware. I'm noting the time right now. And commissioners, what I'd like to do, generally at this point, I'd go through the innovations to let you know where we are. I've done something a little different. And what I'd like to do is have Ryan come back up and walk you through his team's status of where they are. In front of you, you do have, and he'll explain this, little piece of paper for you. And then in the coming weeks, I will ask our other deputy directors to come up and give you a personal perspective on each of those. If you could bring up that the first slide of those presentations for Ryan, I'd appreciate that. And then if we have time, which we won't, I'll give you a quick update on the other ones. Then before he does, Madam President, I would like to ask for a personal privilege at this point in time. Commissioners, yesterday, Janice and I had the tremendous opportunity to attend the annual BSU Scholarship Donors Appreciation dinner last night. We got to join a lot of great people who contribute a lot of dollars to student activities and student scholarships. You know, and I wanted to share with you how amazed I was to see all those great. As a matter of fact, we met some of the students that are enjoying these scholarships that Janice and I have set up for music and such. But the point being is that we hear so much bad going on about universities, students, all these. I got to tell you, BSU, and I'm sure all of you are in great hands, and the students there, they're phenomenal. I mean, there are several Oxford and Rhodes Scholar candidates at BSU. There are courses of fluid nuclear dynamics. I can't even spell that, let alone know what it is, and yet those kids are working on this. So I just want to share with you that from my perspective, I was very energized, just overjoyed with seeing the talent and the energy and the great insights that those students have. So, Madam President, thank you for that opportunity.
Well, and Director, I would like to add, I mean, there's several folks in the room that we've benefited from their brilliance in coming through the university specifically. So that's not lost on us as well. Thank you.
So with that, I'll just ask Ryan to go through his portion. We'll worry about the rest of this in a week or two. And so Ryan, over to you, please.
Madam President, Commission, I'm excited to be here today to present on the work and the initiatives that Development and Technical Services has been working on. The staff is doing a tremendous job adapting to some change. Really, the team there's a lot the team has been doing, and our emphasis on safety is longstanding. Our emphasis on trying to get projects done and serving the public is longstanding, but we're re-emphasizing that, redirecting our resources to really make that a key. And one of the outcomes of that is our new monthly metrics. As you can, let me actually stand it up. one of the things we want to be able to report back to you is the ongoing efforts to improve safety on a consistent basis and what work is being done. Our goal is to see these numbers increase substantially. And as we, as staff, really understand what that is. And so that's been some work that we're really focused on. So you'll see on the first page, we have, we're going to start documenting what are those projects, what's the cost, when do we complete those. I'll tell you the list of ones in the queue is much longer than what you see here. So we're excited to see those come forward. Some of the metrics on accessibility, our leading pedestrian interval will be reported monthly, as well as the safe system metrics, right? Those were the things Boise was talking about a couple weeks ago. Those are metrics we've always been tracking, but want that to really be clearly identified, that that's why we track that information, as well as, how much of different types of improvements we're making. One of our initiatives was to stand up what we call a rapid project implementation team. Really, we're standing up a rapid project implementation division. The team is really working hard to redirect its resources to focus on how can we get more projects done faster from an operational perspective. These are projects that don't require the right-of-way, probably don't require the public outreach because the answer is obvious. We should improve this, we should do this for safety purposes, or we should do those things. So really there's kind of key components to that. One is the safety type projects, which you saw on the first page. On page 3, there's other operations type projects like basin revegetation and work that's going on there, culvert improvements, some of our cooperative development agreements and those types of projects. All of the intent of that is that we can implement projects at a more rapid pace and get improvements out to the public as quick as we can. Really, that's one of the benefits of having an operations team like we have, is that the improvements can be made that are just operational in nature. So that's that metric. Next slide. One of the things that my team is tasked with is managing the extensive, if you flip to the last page of those metrics, you can see the sheer volume of the applications we've received this year. So new development applications is double what it was year to date last year, and plan submittals is triple. That's why you see some longer review times in that development plan review timeline. It takes a little bit longer and staff is working hard, but we're trying to find the resources internally to manage that. We're looking at, can we bring staff from other departments or other divisions in who can help with those surges? And can we cross-train with our inspectors to make sure that they're able to do that? And so that's one of the key tasks. Our team has been doing that. I even sat at the front desk and learned that task. And so we're trying to see how do we meet the different demands of the district using our existing resources. Next slide. And then the last is, and in order to really support some of the other work, is looking at what is our role on project teams. We've sat as part of those project teams consistently and been an ongoing team member. What we're really trying to do is just become a technical resource, maybe backing off the day-to-day so that team can work more on the operational safety type of projects and improvements. And so we're at the point of, we're getting close to finalizing that, which really will then shift the entire focus to these other types of projects as we wrap up designs and other things to make that work and really expand our capacity as a district to get more delivered to the public faster. That's the report I have on our initiatives.
Ryan, exceptional work. Thank you so much for this. I know that community members will absolutely also appreciate this report as well. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Ryan before he jets off?
Madam President, I just want to weigh in too,
Commissioner
after
Hanson.
watching 10 years and all that, we're constantly learning new things, and it's always a challenge for any institution to say, well, this is how we've always been doing it. How do we institute new knowledge that especially some of our new staff members are bringing with them, and we're learning about how do we fit that in? And I think you've described that really well, and we can figure out how to do that so that the public benefits from that new knowledge, new understanding, new metrics of how to move more and more and more people and goods and services in the right-of-way safely, so that they can continue to move and they can continue to be safe and we can continue to grow, which is going to continue to challenge us, but we have these new tools, and I really appreciate the innovative approach. It always takes a new approach. Okay, how do we incorporate these? Instead of just saying, well, we're going to continue to do it the way we used to do it back in, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it's really good, and it's not easy. So kudos to you, a very valuable work, and I'm pleased that what resources we're allowed to spend by the state, we're able to allocate in the most efficient way.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. All right, we've got just a couple more minutes until our regular meeting commences. Thanks. All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please join us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. First order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Do we have any such requests?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I previously, in our pre-meeting, talked about removing some items from the consent agenda. Following our discussion, I will withdraw those requests. Let me just add a comment, though. I still think item number 2 is a lot of money to pay for something that shouldn't take that much money, but it sounds like we don't have a choice. So I will move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Perfect. Moving into the regular agenda, there are no regular agenda items. So next order of business is public communications. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time?
I do not have anybody unless somebody raises their hand on Zoom. We just do have a couple public, but I think we're good today.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy. So with that, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. So next we have a post-commission agenda. So we've got several work sessions. The first work session is a presentation by the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam President and Commission. My name is Lisa Brady, and I am the current chair of the ACHD Bicycle Advisory Committee, serving at your pleasure. And so I am here today to give you a report on what we've been up to. I've been around for a while, just like some of you have too. So I'm excited to report what I have seen and what we're looking forward to working on this year. So the history of the BAC, as you might know, it started in 2005 and has gone from almost all men to a very diverse group of people that represent every type of rider. I looked at our last Zoom meeting and I just couldn't believe we've got somebody that's a youth all the way up to very old people, people with different abilities, women and men, commuter riders, racers. We have everybody represented. And I think, well, probably not everybody. We have some work to do still. I'm proud of that. There are many projects the ACHD Bicycle Advisory has had a hand in over these many years, which would include ongoing efforts to sign bikeways, which we see all over the county. That work continues today. The low-stress bike network connections and updates on the current bike map have required extensive study on the part of many of the previous BAC members and the community. There are green painted bike lanes and protected bike lanes in areas where BAC members brought up safety concerns over the years. There are a couple of them that I feel personally proud of. I'll never mention where they are. We've given our best efforts towards bicycle-friendly county applications and supported the addition of a bicyclist and pedestrian coordinator. We've written a lot of letters. We've given testimony on projects, been at open houses, attended online meetings, walked and biked together, and I feel we have made a difference over all these years. As we look ahead to the future, we're excited about ACHD's partnership with the cities and state to work on Vision Zero and safe systems approaches. We at the BAC are glad to be along for this ride, and considering this, we have several topics we'll be addressing at this year's BAC. Number one, we will continue the work that started more than 5 years ago on work zone safety for all modes. We're proud that out of many of the presentations and meetings, there is now a work zone safety booklet for specific bike and pedestrian treatments, but we're still struggling with safe work zone setups. There are still bike lanes and sidewalks that are blocked by construction signage, which puts people in peril. The very best detours and work zones we have seen are done by GUHO Corporation, and we feel should be used as the gold standard of expected work zones for any ACHD project. That is not a plug for GUHO, just to be clear. We just know that they do good work. Number two, continue to identify areas where the newly adopted policy of leading pedestrian intervals will assist both bicyclists and pedestrians in being more visible and get a head start on safe intersection crossing. We see probably 60% of the crashes in an urban environment are actually in intersections with bicyclists and pedestrians. On our high-speed arterials, just as a side note, we're probably seeing more of the drive up and behind crashes that are happening because of speeds and where the bike lanes are located. That's just a side note that I didn't put in our agenda for last week. Number three, provide updated information on share placement and why it is a struggle to write and produce a letter for you all to suggest a blanket policy when streets across Ada County differ in size, use, and access. Within this, we will relay more information from the community as well as rely on the excellent bike lane inventory report the ACHD undertook with JEB Engineering in the last few years. It's a valuable piece of information. Number four, provide the ACHD bicyclist and pedestrian coordinator with location suggestions for the new permanent and temporary bike counters, as well as areas to put in protected bike lane projects, or at least pilot those projects. We are thankful to each of you who serve the public as members of the public. As an all-volunteer committee, we recognize our responsibility to present the best information in the best interests of all of the communities that we serve, and we will continue to do so as long as we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And on behalf of the commission, we appreciate the time and expertise that all of you share and put into this committee and this work. So thank you for that. It's not easy.
No, it's not.
Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Brady? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
No question, but I have a comment, and that's the experience that I've had the last 8+ years here and watching you and your organizations and the committee very closely and attending most of the meetings.
I'm grateful for the fact that so many things involving safety that I had heard from the commission, but didn't really see implemented the way they are now. I'm grateful those changes have occurred, and very mindful of the influence that you have been on all these changes. And grateful for people like Ryan Head and the level of service parameters that he ramrodded through, and that was a huge change, and how it impacts everybody in this county. I'm just sorry, very sorry, that the result hasn't been fewer deaths. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
Madam President and Lisa, thank you. It's just, I've learned an enormous amount from you. I would just echo Commissioner Goldthorpe's. I think you didn't take credit for the movement we've had on using the level street design performance measures, level of traffic stress, and I think that's really critical. You guys were really helpful in helping to develop that. And you understand, it's a pyramid of traffic, users. At the bottom are those of us with feet, and I include those with wheelchairs. And then above those are those of us who use wheels, but it's just us and a bicycle. And then above that is the single occupancy vehicle, and above that is a Vanpool, and then above that might be an on-demand transit, and then high capacity transit, and so forth, fixed routes. But it's all built on, we all need to be there because we are all moving in the most efficient way of using the existing right-of-way that we're entrusted to manage in the best way. And so you're a piece of that, and it's really helpful. What I really also am impressed with is how you've interacted with people with disabilities, the ADA committee, the bicycle advisory committee, our technical team working on motor vehicle movements, motor vehicle speeds, and so forth, to make sure it all works together well. And the knowledge I'm sure that you guys have developed in that process has been great. So it's been a really good symbiotic relationship, but there's lots of work ahead of us. But as I said with Ryan, each time there's a new understanding about, hey, this might be a better tool. It's not like, oh, well, now how do we use it? You are there to help us figure out how to use it. And so as Ryan's presentation shows, we figure out ways of using it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right. The next work session is the 2024-2028 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Partner Agency Priority Project Requests Review. I almost got through it all. All right, Margaret, so great to see you.
All right, Madam President, members of the Commission, for the record, Margaret Zellis, Senior Transportation Planner here at the Highway District. The purpose of today's work session is to review the formal letters and partner agency project priorities that were submitted to ACHD back in February. As a reminder, Commission staff shared the results of our successful public outreach with our partners, as well as met one-on-one with multiple partners while they developed their lists and provided support for these partners as they brought their priorities in front of their own elected officials.
Margaret, quick question. Did you meet with every city and county in the county?
Madam President, we did not meet with every city and county. We offered it up to every city and county, and we had about 5 partners take up that request.
Thank you.
Before we dive in, here's just a brief reminder of where we're at in developing the 24-28 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. Last month, we were here to review the public comments, and we'll be back again in front of you next month as well. Like our partner agencies, staff requested project priorities from our advisory committees and our neighborhood planning groups by February 15th. We received formal letters from the BAC, the Barber Valley, Highlands, and Southeast Boise neighborhood associations. We saw a variety of projects from these requests that we're eager to share with the Commission as you continue to prepare your own project priorities. These letters are included in today's staff report packet as well. Staff uses these formal requests and partner agency priorities to inform our programming efforts on where we accelerate projects, where we add projects into our programming and add it to our future scoping, as well as where we might need to push items out. As just an additional reminder, we do share these requests with our traffic and maintenance departments as well, and staff is working on that currently. So before I dive in, I want to briefly cover the guidelines we gave our partner agencies. First and foremost, we wanted our partners to tell us a story about what's most important to them. Then we wanted our partners to prioritize projects that are not currently programmed in the 22-26 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. To support this initiative, staff provided each partner agency with 2 lists. The first list included all of their fiscal year 21 project requests that were currently programmed, and the second list included all of their fiscal year 21 requests that were not currently programmed. This was the area where partners added in new requests and where they re-ranked priorities. This process was to help our partners so that they could maximize the points throughout their prioritization process that will be coming up in the next few months. So beginning with Ada County, we received a total of 30 requests that are not currently programmed, with 8 of those being entirely new projects. Ada County's number 1 road and intersection request was the Eckert Road, is actually their number 1, and 2 was the Eckert Road bridges and the road itself. And the top community programs priority was for pedestrian facilities along 5 Mile Road between Rutzel and Winterhawk. Continuing on, we have the city of Boise next. We got 112 total requests that are not currently programmed, with 24 of those being new project requests. A little bit unique to the city of Boise is we did also see 8 projects that were removed from their fiscal year 21 project priority list. The top ranked community program project was for Boise, was for bike and pedestrian improvements along Collister Road, and the top road and intersection project was for Fort Boise improvements. Additional details and comments from our partner agencies on these specific requests can be found in the staff report as well. Continuing on with Eagle, we saw 20 requests that are not currently programmed, with 11 of those being new project requests. The top ranked community program project for Eagle was the Old Park Place extension, and for the roads and intersections was Beacon Light Road between State Highway 16 and State Highway 55. So there's a few segments in there. Next we have Garden City.
Margaret, before you move on, I noticed in the left bottom corner, it says the double star is prioritized by multiple partners. So I was looking to see if there were any in Eagle, but I don't see any. So never mind, you have that consistent throughout each slide. Thank you.
Okay. Next we have Garden City, where we received a total of 80 requests, with 4 of those being new projects. Garden City's top ranked request was for roadway and bike and ped improvements along Allworth Street and Adams Street. Continuing with CUNA, we got a total of 38 requests, with the top community programs requests being pedestrian facilities along Deer Flat Road between K Street and State Highway 69, and the top road and intersection was State Highway 69 and CUNA Road. Next, we have the City of Meridian, who provided a total of 120 requests, with 6 of those being new projects. The highest ranked community programs project were roadway and bike and ped improvements along Stoddard Road between Victory and Overland, and the highest road and intersection was the Linder Road overpass between Overland and Franklin. The City of Star gave a total of 21 unprogrammed requests, with 3 of those being new project requests. The highest ranked road and intersection project was Star Road from Washington to State. This was actually their top 3 priorities for that section. And the highest ranked community programs project was for an enhanced crossing at Highbrook Street and Star Road. The Boise School District provided 50 requests, with 32 of those being new projects. The highest ranked community programs request was for an enhanced pedestrian crossing at 15th Street and Washington Elementary. This is a really great example of where we will be sharing requests with our traffic team as well, just to make sure we're all receiving the same information. CUNA School District provided 46 project requests, with 9 of those being new projects. The highest ranked community programs request was for improvements at 10 Mile Road and Initial Point High School. The top road and intersection priority was Deer Flat Road and K Street. Next we have West Ada, who provided 46 total requests, with 18 of those being new project priorities. The top community programs project request was for pedestrian facilities along Linder Road between Washington Street and Maple Street. And the top road and intersection priority was Floating Feather Road and State Highway 16. Boise State joined us as a partner agency in the fiscal year 21 for their priorities. This year we got an update on those requests. They provided us with 15 total requests, and 3 of those being new project priorities. The top community programs request was for pedestrian improvements between University Drive from Brady Street to Crisway Avenue. The top road and intersection request was for the University Drive redesign. Again, additional details about the specifics of these requests are in the staff report. And then, Finally, VRT is another partner that joined us in fiscal year 21 for the priorities and provided an update this year. VRT provided us with 29 new total requests, with 9 of them being new project priorities. The top community programs request was for bike and ped improvements along University Drive as well, between Brady and Lincoln Avenue. And the top road and intersection priority was for corridor funding plan for State Street between
Margaret,
Glenwood.
it's not advancing.
Oh,
Sorry to interrupt
I'm
you.
so
There you
sorry.
go.
My apologies. So the top community programs again was for University Drive between Brady and Lincoln. And then the top intersection priority was for State Street, a corridor funding plan for State Street between Glenwood Avenue and 23rd Street. So we will be back in front of the commission in April 12th to provide an integrated 5-year work plan check-in work session. Finally, commission staff is now presented on the public project requests, as well as the formal letters we've received and the partner agency project priorities to help you inform your own project priority requests that are due to staff by March 30th. Thank you, and I'll now stand for any questions.
Great presentation. Thank you, Margaret. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I appreciate all the March 30th reminders. Thank you.
Yes.
You learned from the past.
Madam President, I just want to weigh
Commissioner
in,
Hanson.
Margaret and Christie. I hope all this overwhelming amount of data that Christie's had to process isn't led to her being under the weather today. No, this is tremendously valuable. Yes, the busiest time for us commissioners between now and the 30th of March, because we look through all of these and all the input we have. It's disappointing some of the neighborhoods I work with didn't take my advice and send their own separate letter. I think they're thinking I'm going to do it. So
Same here.
so that just makes the workload even more. But there's lots to sort through, and I really, really appreciate it. Each year it gets better and better. So we got our work cut out for us between now and the 30th, and we'll be ready to wrestle with the priorities in April. Thanks.
And Commissioner Goldthorpe.
I remember 8 years ago plus, and Jim remembers further back than that, how few requests we had at this meeting, if we even had this meeting in those years, as to what priorities were and community programs requests. And now just this year we had over 1,300 from citizens, aside from all these. And we only have room for really a couple of dozen, give or take, projects that we can do every year. And part of the reason we don't and can't do more is because we still have to collaborate with everybody else, from the utilities to the developers to everyone else, on the projects that they want. And that makes it very difficult for people to get around this county sometimes because of the amount of pavement that's dug up. I'm just looking forward, hopefully way sooner than later, for a dig once ordinance that we can agree on. And I believe that once that is done, we'll be able to accomplish a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay. All right. The third work session is the fiscal year 2024 budget department overview, plans and projects, and also the development and technical services team. Welcome, Justin.
Well, thank you very much, Madam President, members of the commission. Once again, for the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Projects here at the Highway District. Just following the lead of our other division deputies here today to provide just a informational briefing on our budget, some of the details associated with that, and the initiatives that we are undertaking, finalizing here in 23, and then coming up for fiscal year 24. I do want to highlight, I manage the smallest division here at ACHD. There's 49 of us, but I'm not going to be talking about today the largest portion of ACHD's budget, which is the capital budget. I'm here to talk about the staff basically, and the work it takes to manage that large budget. We typically will have a separate work session to discuss the capital budget, which is all the projects and things like that. But this is focused on the staff that helps to manage that. So there's 49 of us, including 2 interns, 2 major departments, planning and programming and capital projects. Within planning and programming, it's broken up into 3 basic sections: planning, which is led by Christy Inselman; pavement management, which is Rick Patricelli; and access and mobility. It's actually accessibility and mobility. I just flubbed it on there. But that is our new supervisor, Dave Rader, who's taking the lead of that group. And I had a chance to introduce that group just yesterday at the ADA Advisory Committee, and really excited to see the stand-up of that group within our planning and programming department. I think there's going to be a lot of benefits from that. Capital projects, Diane Bevins is the manager of that group. I should have mentioned planning and programming. The manager is Tom Laws, who's been out on paternity leave for a while, but he'll be back actually in the next couple of weeks. Under Diane, you have project management, federal aid, project management, right-of-way, and utilities. Total budget for kind of this group is about $6 million. It doesn't really fluctuate that much year to year, pretty stable, staffing changes and things like that. But as I stated, that $6 million supports our $80 million capital budget. So just breaking these down into some different categories, you can see administration, which is myself and the administrative team. Planning, projects, utilities, and right-of-way are broken out separately due to the size of those groups. This is how it breaks down: 23 current, 24 projected. Not much variation, as you can see. I do want to highlight planning. That budget dips a little bit as projected, primarily because this year, under the planning budget, we're performing our independent countywide pavement evaluation, which is an effort that we do only every 3 years, and it happens to be in 23, but we're not going to be doing that in 24. It's a pretty significant dollar amount that you only see every 3 years in the budget. Once again, my team and what we're focused on, really it's the planning and projects initiatives that come through the commission, the executive team, and the discussions and direction that we receive from you. I do want to highlight, really one of my primary roles and the role of our administrative function is to make sure that we're incorporating commission direction into all of ACHD projects. And we're committed to that, and we're doing that. There is, commission direction changes over time, as you're aware, with new commissioners and changes in direction and policy and procedure. And we do our best to incorporate all of that into the projects that we're developing. Sometimes you get a project that's designed under a previous commission, maybe with different ideas and different direction. We get a new one, and we do our best to update those designs, change them, modify them as we can to meet all of those items that you have identified as a priority. Planning. This is a really important group here at the Highway District. As you can see, great staff like Margaret who help with the update to the integrated 5-year work plan. As Commissioner Goldthorpe mentioned, that has really become a full-time job for more than just one person. It is because we go through this process, you see the amount of outreach, you see the amount of coordination. This takes a lot of time, a lot of effort from our team, and they're doing such a great job. And it's great to see all these presentations, the advancements we've made in technology, sharing information, and I think it's really wonderful. It's pretty unique if you look at other documents like this across the agency, across the nation, which I do. Kind of seeing, are we up to speed? Are we, matching what others are doing? I say in most categories, we are exceeding what other areas are doing when it comes to outreach to partners, regional coordination, which is one of the unique benefits of ACHD. CIP update, which you were just given a briefing on, I believe, last week, working on that very carefully, and that's a very important document that supports our impact fee ordinance. Project scoping and enhancing that process. Making sure we're getting all of these ideas and design ideas and enhancements all the way down to the scoping level. If we can get it right all the way at the beginning, it makes the process a lot easier as we go into design and construction, and that's really what that's all about. I did mention independent pavement evaluation. This is something the commission has supported over the years. Our pavement is our largest asset, and ACHD is committed to really maintaining that in the best shape possible. Ultimately, that's a tax savings for the taxpayer. Having good roads, although people think, oh, it's expensive, in the long run, it's actually less expensive to maintain the roads in good shape than it is to go back and have to rebuild everything because we don't maintain it. Concept studies, neighborhood plans, you as commissioners are involved in all of those, and we come to you and present, and then obviously supporting the new accessibility and mobility team. Capital projects, this is where, you know, we get down into the actual engineering designs of these projects and all of the coordination that comes through that. This team includes, as I stated, right-of-way and utilities also, which are critical parts of any construction project. It's exciting. I've been at the district for a while now, and it's exciting to see all the projects that we've constructed as an agency over the past 15, 20 years and going beyond that. Some examples of those types of projects that we construct: Locust Grove, Victory to Overland, with a roundabout currently under construction today. Kootenai project currently under construction today. Corey Lane, it's a sidewalk gap project currently under construction today. Next year, we're looking at Lake Hazel and Maple Grove, which is a major roundabout project in Southwest Boise. Eagle, Lake Hazel to Amity, and the Eagle and Lake Hazel intersection, major improvements in this part of the county. Garden Street, sidewalks and bikeway, which has been a project we've been working on for a long time, highly prioritized by our partners. And then the Eagle and State intersection in downtown Eagle, which is a phase one. This is going to be a two-phase project. We're working on that right now. It takes a lot to get there. There's a lot of design, the right-of-way acquisition, preparing the bidding documents, and all the things we go through to get to that place where we can put it out to bid and hire a contractor to go construct it. So just to kind of summarize our goals, obviously focused on the integrated 5-year work plan, the CIP, continuing to successfully facilitate those advisory committees. It was wonderful to have Lisa here today, and my team helps to facilitate those committees. You know, as staff, when it comes to the advisory committees, we really want to make sure that we're facilitating their ability to communicate with you. Mm-hmm. Really, that's the purpose of those committees, as you have outlined it in the bylaws. It's so those committees have access to the commissioners. And as staff, we do our best to make sure that they have that access and can provide you with all of the information, letters, guidance that they choose to provide. We have various concept studies and plans coming up for next year. Obviously, it's always a goal for us to prepare those major projects for bidding early, so we can get those out early and get the best price possible and get those projects constructed. I do want to highlight right-of-way. Over the years, you know, the purchase of right-of-way is a continued focus here at ACHD to do that efficiently, to create designs that limit right-of-way impacts where possible. But unfortunately, right-of-way purchase is something that we have to do a lot of. And it's, I think we have a great team. I'd say the best team, certainly in the West, that's buying right-of-way. We're talking 400, 500 parcels a year of negotiation. And these are negotiations that occur in people's homes. Oftentimes people are maybe a little upset that they have, for whatever, even a sidewalk project, you'd be surprised, you know, you got to take out the rose bush that was planted by grandma, and, you know, these are things that are real, and it has real impacts on people, and we have people here at ACHD doing that every day, and they do a great job. And then implementing the innovations from the project team and scoping reviews. And really a lot of that is focused on many of the things the commission has been discussing related to speed mitigation, safety enhancements to the projects, really, you know, dialing that in on the projects and integrating that into the project teams and the scoping reviews, and ensuring that we're including all of those items in those projects at all levels. So that's my brief overview of what we're up to as a team, and glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Justin. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner McKinney.
Madam President, thank you. Justin, just one question back on the right-of-way issue. I know that ACHD has a program of identifying future right-of-way that we're not planning a project right now, but we anticipate in the future we're going to need it. And I know we have a program to do that. Is that part of your department, or is that separate?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, yes, we do have a very aggressive right-of-way preservation program. The foundation of that program is found in our master street map, which is our long-range vision for the roadway network that establishes a right-of-way preservation corridor that we get through the active development applications. And so today, when an application comes in on a right of for a development on a corridor that we haven't widened, and maybe we're not going to widen it for 15, 20 years, our development services division references the master street map, and although today it's just a 2-lane roadway, maybe they look at it and go, no, our long-term vision for this roadway is 3 lanes or 5 lanes, maybe 7 lanes on some select corridors, and they are getting that space, that right-of-way through the development process. Now, that map was adopted by ACHD for the first time in 2010. And there's a lot of time before that. This valley hasn't always known what it was going to be, right? And back in the 80s and 90s, I think there were visions of growth, probably not the same visions that we understand today. And so there are still corridors where I wish we would have known back then, but we do have to purchase that right of way kind of retroactively.
What can you give me a ballpark? How much are we spending in that regard, just preserving future right of way? What's our annual outlay on that currently?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I think we have through that process of development, it's not that expensive for the highway district to do that because you have a willing seller through the development process. We also have a corridor preservation budget of about $2 million a year, I believe. So that $2 million a year is specifically intended for corridor preservation, active right-of-way acquisition, and strategic right-of-way acquisition.
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, Madam President and Justin, thanks. This is great. I've seen what I've particularly appreciated in just recent years and months is the closer integration with development and technical services so that we don't have these separate pools of, oh, that's a project that's just a maintenance one, and that you understand that it still impacts the neighborhood and the same level of outreach and understanding that is going into, say, Kootenai is also available to other neighborhoods where it may have started out as a federal capital aid project, but it's still going to impact this. And you understand how important it is to integrate that approach so that we're reaching out. The other is I really appreciate the unique approach you have to each of the cities in the county, because they each have their own priorities, and understanding that maybe even our policies have to reflect that, like they do on the geometry of local roads, and moving in that direction because they're setting their priorities, and it might be just a little different, and it will be. And so I think that's good, just because we're serving 7 unique city jurisdictions in the county. So I appreciate the direction we're going, and I think we're much more responsive to what the cities are asking. And of course, we as commissioners and city as council members and mayors are not unique individuals. We are presumably responding to what the public wants us to do. So we are a conduit through which the public is asking for these. And I can tell you the approach that ACHD has taken over recent years has given a number of places a greater sense of, understanding and ownership of what's happening, more empowerment. Sort of like, okay, which led to more requests, but also a deeper understanding, I think, of why we can't do this today. Yes, but look, you're in the system, and what we're doing today is what was requested, 8-10 years ago. And so look, if you're in the system, stay engaged. This is about your neighborhood. We want to be a partner. We're also a tax supported entity, so we are very frugal with the use of our tax dollars to the extent we're allowed to use them. And if you're patient, this is what's going to happen. But we also have the immediate response to where there's a real key immediate, we can get some big bang for our buck with the immediate response program. So all of that I've seen develop over the last few years has been really good, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Welcome back.
Thank you. I don't think I've stood up here this much in a little while.
Say.
Madam President, Commission, Ryan Head, Deputy Director, Development and Technical Services. Excited to give you our information briefing on our budget for 2024. Pick one. There we go. All right, from the smallest division to one of the largest divisions we have at the district. Thank you again for your approval of those 2 additional positions today. The Development and Technical Services Division really is your operation division here at the district that seeks to operate the system on an ongoing basis. We have 159 and a half people. We have 1 part-time employee who helps run the TMC and provides an incredible service there as they manage all those events, sometimes late into the evening. We have 4 major departments within the division. We have our development services, traffic services, design and construction, and then environmental. Our total budgets for 24 will be roughly 21, or is proposed to be 21 million. This is the breakdown. It looks like there's a few more departments, but this is how it breaks down in the budget. We do break out traffic operations and traffic engineering, as well as our design from construction services, just so you can see those different categories. Again, it's pretty stable from a staff perspective and from a cost perspective. We did have a larger purchase of new survey equipment this year, which is why there's a minor fall in the design budget. But that's thank you again for that, for the approval of that. Administration is me and my wonderful administrative assistant, Jen Smith. Really, we oversee the operation and on all of those different categories. One of the things that I'm involved with directly is the Let's Get There Safely Signalization project. You met our great project managers who came from those other departments to try and to pull that together, and they're managing the day-to-day, but that's one of the tasks that you'll see under my category. Development services, the salaries are roughly about 5.3, and the vast majority of those are all paid by fees that are put on the developers, on the contractors for the inspection and the construction of that. Major projects that they're working on will be the impact fee ordinance update this next year. We're working with Justin's team on the CIP component of that. And really, it's processing all of those permits and applications. That team works incredibly hard, is constantly being asked, why can't I have this yesterday? And is committed to really accomplishing that work as quickly as they possibly can. We love the opportunity to do cooperative projects, whether that be acquiring that right away early as we work with the developer and get that for future projects, or whether we can work with the developer to make improvements. You saw a couple cooperative development agreements come before the commission recently, which will accelerate work that we have been waiting for in a long time. Our Safe Sidewalk program has now been moved into this department. They work with our inspectors and so that we can enhance our ADA inspection, as well as continue to make those sidewalk improvements. And their budget is part of the capital budget, but that team is working really hard to continue to build and expand that. For the last number of years, it's been about 1.6 million. With some of the changes we're making, we're hoping to at minimum double those expenditures so that we're making more improvements quicker, because their list is very long of how many of repairs and other things that need to be made. One thing I just highlight here, as the commission's talked with the city of Boise on that interest in micro trenching and bringing in additional fiber companies, we don't know yet. We're working on those modifications to a policy that we would bring back to you, working with the city and meeting with either just happened or is happening in the near future. We're meeting with Salt Lake to understand how their programs worked and their ordinances have been written. But we don't know what's going to happen once we open up that floodgate, because we really do see that will have a big impact on on the number of vendors, the number of work that's happening from that trenching side, and that has a big impact on our inspection. This last year, we stood up that fiber department, or that fiber group within our inspection team, just focused on that because of all the work that's happening there. The next department is traffic services. This includes traffic engineering, congestion management, as well as traffic operations. All our operators who are out there doing the painting in the middle of the night and the signs and the signals, a wonderful group there. And we're really excited to actually be filing for our initial civil and groundwork and grading permit in the next week and a half for that Franklin Traffic Operations Center. So thank you for your support of that. That will be a wonderful opportunity to try and consolidate all of that traffic services into one place. And then this team really is the heart and soul behind that safety, all the safety efforts we make. The Let's Get There Safely campaign, as well as the Safe Systems projects. That's the LPI is implemented by this team. All the pedestrian crossings that are identified. We're really excited as we take these lists that you're getting from all the cities. We look at those and go, hey, what can we just go do that's within that realm of operations that we see as, because we look at those and evaluate those anyway. We expect that we can wrap up the flashing yellow arrow red before PED implementation. We're looking at speed mitigation projects. They're the ones who do all the analysis and implement those, as well as looking at school zone safety improvements. We've identified a number of things, and that's what Kelly and Paige that you just recently met who are working on the LPI will also be working on that. Design and construction. So we have a design team of designers who help with some capital projects, but also design projects for the civil component of the signals. They help with our safe sidewalk program. They help maintenance, design some of the work that they do. But we're also looking to adjust their work so that they're also focused on expanding that safe sidewalk program and getting more of those projects done, filling gaps, and doing pipe and culvert replacements. They also look at the stormwater quantity, and so when we have flooding issues, how can we repair those? So that's what this team does there. Environmental, one of the major projects here, it's our smallest department there, but one of the major projects here is helping stand up and design the Cloverdale decant facility. So we have a facility there, it needs to be covered, so we're working on what that's gonna look like, as well as then hooking it up fully to the Boise sewer system, so that right now we discharge some, and they're just kind of tracking that. We're gonna have a permit that will be permanent there. And with this, that will be a great benefit. So we expect construction to begin in '24 on that project. And then we'll continue our basin revegetation and maintenance, our green stormwater infrastructure, those types of projects. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a theme to all of this. That's what our team's really focused on, is implementing that traffic operations center. I'm very excited. We should have that completed by next summer, by 2024. Completing that Cloverdale decant facility, and then continuing the Let's Get There Safely and cross-training as I reported on earlier today. And with that, one thing I did want to note, you probably won't see a lot of these rapid projects in the budget listed out, because the goal of them is to be rapid. So we would bring those back through budget adjustments and say, here, this is the project we're ready to go on. Here's what, ask for these funds. So that we need that more fine-grained kind of process to make sure we get those, because they come up all the time. So with that, I stand for your comments or questions.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. I have a question. So a couple of years ago, we heard in sort of no uncertain terms from developers, why are things moving at fast? And we learned, it really had to do with the quality of the applications, and our staff were spending valuable time basically fixing things that should have been fixed by the applicant. And so where are we in that? Because of course their fees pay for it, and we're not gonna put extra money in order to accommodate that. So it just means longer delays. So where are we on that? And is there, I think it helped that the commissioners were listening, and we sort of said, push, the development community to get the quality of their applicants up, so we're not doing their work.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Hansen, it hasn't changed much.
Here.
Let's be real. There's only so many consultants in the area. There's a lot of development. There's a lot of work ITD's doing, ACHD's doing on top of that. And so they're spread pretty thin. And I think that does result in some of the lower quality product at times. We're still having times I see 5 reviews on some projects. And so it is constant pressure on the team. Hey, why can't I have this sooner? Well, we have a lot of these that we're having to review 3, 4, 5 times. So that hasn't changed much. We're continuing to work with them and try to encourage. We do have extra fees we can charge for additional reviews to try and incentivize and encourage that, but also to cover the staff cost of that aspect. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. All right, our next item within our work session is the Valley Regional Transit Regional Vanpool Study. Stephen, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam President. Stephen Hunt, Chief Development Officer of Valley Regional Transit. And I will be speaking today on a regional vanpool study that we worked with partners across Ada and Canyon County on over the last, at this point, it's been a couple of years. So wait for that to get pulled up here. Thank you. Good. Oh.
Online.
Thank you, Ken.
Good. So I just am here to give an update on this regional vanpool study. I wanted to start with this slide to talk about why is vanpool still something that we are interested in evaluating and looking at. It is an important thing that works. It helps people get to work. It's been proven to help reduce the amount of single occupancy vehicles that are at employers, and there's been a long successful history here at ACHD with Commuter Ride on making vanpool work. It gets better use out of existing infrastructure, all of those things and it's actually, when we talk to employers, it's an important thing that they're able to share with their employees as a benefit. Anything that helps their employees get to work, they see as a benefit to supporting the economy.
Stephen, I just want to make sure that we don't necessarily use vanpool in the same context. So can you define vanpool for those who are listening, right? There might be a different idea of what vanpool means. So can you define that for us?
Sure, Madam President. So in the context of this study, what we were talking about with vanpool encompasses like traditional vanpool, which would be people getting in a van, 7 to 12 people, they get in a van and take it to work. Usually the driver is a volunteer driver, somebody who's going to that destination anyhow. And then they turn around and go home in the evening. And so most often these vanpools are things that run consistently throughout the work week, whether that's a regular Monday through Friday work week or different from that. But this study is inclusive of that traditional vanpool model. We'll get into some of the reasons why we are exploring ways that vanpool might need or could be modified to accommodate a larger workforce. So that's one of the things that we found with this study that I'll share in a minute.
Thank you, Stephen.
Sure. So the purposes of the study really were to do this. We were looking to align the vanpool strategies with the regional goals. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but we have ACHD Commuter Ride in Ada County. We have needs in Canyon County that Valley Regional Transit would hear about, and we wanted to make sure that we have a consistent way of approaching vanpool needs across our service area, which gets into the next bullet point, which is ensuring that we're able to have a consistent level of service for all Treasure Valley residents. And we also wanted to explore the opportunities to make vanpool options more flexible. I'll mention in a moment some of the results that came out of employer surveys that talk about the need for additional flexibility in employees. And we also identified that there are needs that we hear from the industry side of things on getting certain workforce to their workplace. In other words, the individuals that have the most difficulty getting to and from work often are also those that have the least reliable transportation options. And so there's a need on the industry side as well as on the resident side of figuring out how can we help connect those individuals to employment opportunities in the valley. So I wanted to touch on a couple of findings that came out of the survey that we did. This was during COVID, so some of this might be a little bit overstated now, but it was significant, I think, to point out that of those that we interviewed, 70% of those interviewed had some flexibility about the start and end times of their workday, which means if we have a model that is too fixed, then people are going to opt out of that. If they have flexibility about when they start, the days that they work, then if their only option is one trip in the morning, one trip out in the evening, and it's the same Monday through Friday, that can create some barriers to uptake of that as a transportation option. So a significant amount of workplace flexibility. We also asked about how does that flexibility change throughout the week, and again, only about 30% said that they had a static work week schedule. So meaning Monday through Friday or whatever the days are that they're working, that's the same days that they're working every day of the week.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Thank you, Stephen. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
Help me understand something. It would seem to me, and tell me how I'm misunderstanding this, that a Vanpool arrangement would seem to be better suited to people whose work schedules are fixed than those whose schedules are really flexible. What help me understand, your previous slide was you were suggesting that the people with flexible schedules are more amenable to the benefits of a Vanpool. So help me understand that.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, what I meant to say is that there is significant flexibility, or there's significant need for flexibility among the existing workforce, and traditional Vanpools tend to be less flexible. So I wasn't suggesting that the flexible employee is a good candidate for a traditional Vanpool. I was suggesting that there's an opportunity for us to think about how Vanpool can change to accommodate a more flexible workforce.
Okay, all right.
So that's a need that we've identified through the study. And
thank you.
yes, precisely because that flexibility is something that employees either need or desire. We also asked questions about how much people were spending on their work trips, and so those range from $6 to $10 per direction per day. And we asked how much people would need to save before they would be willing to try an alternative, and how much time they'd be willing to add to their trip in order to realize those savings. And so there's some room there. People are willing to accept a longer trip if it can realize some cost savings. So what the study did was, taking all this into consideration, it developed a couple of these are made up profiles, but they're intended to represent the different kinds of individuals that are out in the Treasure Valley workforce today. And so there are those that are more traditional in terms of when they work and that it's consistent. And we looked at the transportation options and Vanpool shared use options that might work for that individual. We also developed 4 other different profiles. One where their travel times are always at the same time, but maybe they're going to different places, or where they're different all the time. They need to be able to go to different places throughout the week, maybe even at different times. Or maybe they're just working, maybe it's static, but they're not working 9 to 5, they're working more shift work maybe. And so the pool of other people that they can carpool or vanpool with might be smaller. And then we also identified this other category of individuals that maybe don't have the same resources available to them, that are actually an important workforce to many of our employers in the Valley. Maybe they don't have driver's licenses, maybe they're trying to integrate into the community. And so we face that with trying to get maybe, for example, janitorial services out at Micron or out at CSB and CUNA. Those employees also tend to turn over quickly. So you have an employee force that's going to be there for a short period of time, maybe has, as I mentioned, not a long driving history, or maybe doesn't have a driver's license. And so it creates challenges to apply the traditional vanpool option in those cases. So I mentioned a little bit about these hard to reach populations, and we did some effort to quantify who they are, where they are, and the reasons that they're important to the regional economy. And we see, particularly in Canyon County, where we saw interest in trying to get people out to, well, they might start in Canyon County, but going over to Ontario at the old Orida plant was one use case that came up, where we were trying to figure out how can we serve those individuals. Or a lot of the agricultural work, again, in Canyon County, maybe where you've got people that actually live in group housing, going to a field. Those aren't places that we've been able to use traditional vanpool to support, but they're important both to those employers and to the people who are trying to make a living. So we've identified a couple of needs through this study of how can we make vanpool more useful to more people and support the region both economically as well as in terms of making the best use of existing resources. So the study came up with three specific goals, and I'll just step through those with some actions associated with each of them. First being building a supportive foundation for vanpool and shared mobility. So, and the main point on this goal was we wanted to come back and say we need to have a place where we can talk as a region about what our strategies are for vanpool and other shared mobility options. And so the first bullet on here, creating a regional committee with VRT and commuter ride, where we can talk about what those investment needs are going to be, both in the short and the long term, so that we have a consistent approach. And then underneath that, there are other actions. We need to figure out how we overcome some of the geographic barriers that we face in our current arrangement. Valley Regional Transit serving both Ada and Canyon County. We have partners in Caldwell in particular that are talking about different employment centers that are having issues with parking and wanting to identify vanpool solutions out there. And we haven't been able to support them to the level that we would desire. So this would create a forum where we would be able to present an organized approach to how we invest in vanpool and shared mobility, and elevate that conversation at Valley Regional Transit so that can have a voice at the board level. The other goal, strengthening vanpool services. So we have a long history of a successful vanpool program here in the Treasure Valley. So we want to build on that. We want to make sure that we don't throw away any of the things that are working, and still find a way to expand into these other areas. Make sure that we're not over-reliant on just a few large employers, but are able to accommodate the needs of the current workforce. So there are a couple of strategies that were identified in there under that goal. And then finally, the third goal of advancing the regional vanpool and shared mobility marketing and partnerships. So there's a lot of opportunity. So there's the services that we provide, and then there's also the behavioral changes that would support those services. And so the study identified a need to coordinate what we might call transportation demand management actions, things that we would be working with cities and other partners on how we could support and encourage use of of alternative modes of transportation. So those were the three goal areas, and there were specific recommendations in the plan underneath each of those. But what I wanted to just bring to your attention today is that we have been working over the last several years with our partners on this. We presented this to the executive board at the last VRT board meeting. We'll be taking this to their April board meeting for consideration. Been working with ACHD staff and are here in front of you today to talk about this study. And what we really see as the next steps would be the formation of this Vanpool committee that would allow us to have a shared forum where we could talk about what investments are we going to be making, make sure that that has a place in front of the VRT board so we can talk about investments and priorities, and continue to build and expand a successful Vanpool program and shared use options. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you for your excellent presentation. I just want to say, from my own standpoint, I really am curious about how we as an ACHD can support your goals to offer the Vanpool services across the region, because it's absolutely paramount, as you've talked about, for the economy, for costs, all of those things, that the excellent commuter ride program that we currently offer, it needs to be able to be accessed with other communities that we currently can't serve. So I would love to be part of that discussion and look at me as like a partner to make sure that we can make that happen, because it's working, and I work across all different counties in Southwest Idaho, and I hear from folks in Payette and Boise, I mean, all sorts of places like you talked about that don't involve coming through Ada County, and it's a massive loss. So absolutely, I think we're going to be a partner in all of this, and looking forward to learning with you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Thank you. Stephen, I having served on your board before and been around this for a number of years, I'm wondering, when you talk about some of the other surrounding counties and cities, and there's more limited demand currently for the services, have you ever considered before using smaller vans?
Yeah, so the types of vehicles and how they're procured and managed are things that are discussed in the study as well, yes. And
okay.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Steve, just one quick question. Help me understand the relationship between the Vanpool program you're talking about here and commuter ride. Are they both part of the same thing, or are they two separate things? Conceptually, how do they fit together?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, so ACHD Commuter Ride is the Vanpool program that really the only Vanpool program in the Treasure Valley, Ada and Canyon County. We don't have a comparable program in Canyon County, and that's one of the issues that we're trying to address with this. Is Valley Regional Transit as an agency has a responsibility to serve both Ada and Canyon County. There is a Vanpool operator and service in Ada County, and we're trying to ensure that we have that same kind of level of service in both Ada and Canyon County. So the purpose of the committee would be to come together and figure out, so how do we move forward and expand that level of service to all parts of the Treasure Valley, and it would in fact deal with that question of the relationship between BRT and commuter ride.
Okay, so in other words, commuter ride is the Vanpool service for Ada County at the moment, and VRT is looking at doing something beyond what commuter ride does, something that goes into Canyon County, and perhaps even in Ada County, additional expansion, or any expansion to Ada County would be through commuter ride, would it not, presumably?
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, those are the details that the reason that we would need that committee and make sure that it has a voice at the
is to work that out.
Yes, is to work that out precisely.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to frame it as like the VRT versus commuter ride. There's what VRT is experiencing is needs in other parts of our service area that aren't met with the existing commuter ride model. And so we're not proposing an alternative necessarily to commuter ride. We are needing a place where we can talk about the Vanpool needs in both Ada and Canyon County and then figure out some solutions.
Okay, thank you.
And I have another question, Stephen. So you mentioned on the last slide, like develop a policy package. Like what type of policies? Can you explain that a little bit more?
Let me turn to that slide to make sure I got it straight in my head. But what I think we were talking about there is we have, I think that's under the second goal.
I believe it was the third goal, but.
Third goal. Develop a Vanpool policy package for local jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. Oh, right. So in that case, what we were talking about is, so this is kind of in the TDM world, or what are the types of policies that a local jurisdiction could enact that would encourage alternative modes of transportation, Vanpool use in particular, or shared use in particular. So that's what that's.
It's mostly local jurisdictions. It wouldn't involve other types of government organizations.
Well, I'm going to say local jurisdictions because that's what the slide says. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Sounds good. Commissioner Hanson.
So Madam President and Stephen, I really appreciate this. I really appreciate the thoughtful approach to not from sort of like, well, what exists right now, but what's the dynamic out there, real world people, and understanding, the options people do or don't have, and the number of people who use Vanpools or have to use Vanpools because they don't have those other options. That's the kind of data that should really inform our decisions. I really appreciate that the approach is where are the employees and the employers in this valley, and it's dynamic, as you said. We've experienced some changes through the pandemic, but the need to serve those to the economy and the ability of people to move within that economy is really important. That's the role of a Vanpool that is effective in helping people if they don't have that option of single occupancy vehicle or prefer not to, and maybe then to ultimately help the transit agency understand, those areas where there's a lot of demand, maybe that's where we start to implement the on-demand bus services, small vehicle bus services, or ultimately, fixed routes. But it's a dynamic movement of people, and I'm having sat in on visiting with folks at May in Motion for quite a number of years, realize they're different every year. There's a different pool of people who need that opportunity to take advantage of a Vanpool, but then we'll have other options maybe next year or the year after, and it's a constantly moving dynamic. And I'm really glad that it's the people-centered approach to where that need is, rather than sort of like the agency-centered approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I would just, again, want to recognize the support and help that we had with ACHD staff on this. They've been really helpful and appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last but not least, we're going to have an update on the jurisdictional reports. We're going to have a lovely little workshop. Director.
Commissioners, Madam President, good afternoon again. What you have in front of you is the jurisdictional reports that we would like to publish. You had asked us to hold on those that you could have a discussion on the dais as to what you might want to see, what you might not want to see, or have us answer any questions or concerns. We are taking great notes on this and such, so this is really an opportunity for all of you to decide what you'd like to do.
Thank you, Director. And I'll just add that there seems to be some confusion about what the reports say from some external partners. And so I think the purpose of our workshop today is how can we share this information to reduce that confusion with the audience that we're sharing it with, or is there additional information that we should provide? So commissioners, I'll turn it over to you all for discussion. and suggestions and thoughts.
Madam President?
Commissioner Hanson.
So I think it's good timing because we just had Margaret gave a great presentation on what the priorities are for the different jurisdictions. And I think that really informs us as to where our focus is and has been, where are their priorities and where have we invested their money in those priorities. This sort of just kind of generically puts all the money in one pot and decides, okay, this is in this jurisdiction or this in this jurisdiction, but it isn't necessarily, were these the priorities of these cities at the time, or did it happen to, or actually was this a priority of an area outside of that city, but that city's getting indicated, because it's just not helpful in understanding that. I think the data we received from the cities themselves saying these are our priorities, and in fact, as Margaret pointed out, some of them are changing those priorities, saying actually we want to deprioritize this, we want to move this one up. And so the measure is how well have we been able to respond to those. I think we've responded to those pretty well, but we're limited in terms of the allocation of some funds. We can't spend some pools of money in other areas. So, you know, it's not a piece of information. This kind of broad sweep of information isn't helpful to me in making decisions. So, but the information that Margaret provided is massively important for making decisions. So, I'm not sure how valuable it would be to anybody else either.
So I guess to summarize what I think you just said is that, obviously priorities change from year to year, and subsequently the budgets have to reflect those priorities as they shift, which takes time.
Right.
And then sometimes those projects, it's not easy to just say, yeah, we gave you this much money, and then the projects equal that amount of money that they gave us, right? Year after year.
Yeah, I'll just use an example. I think it was a critical need for east-west traffic on Fairview to have built out the intersection at Fairview and Cole, and then to build out the intersection at Cole and over the interstate. That was huge. Cole and Overland, both of which are technically within Boise's city limits, but I think their priorities were at the time Whitewater Park and some of the other areas, but they're counted as, it provides a regional system, probably provides far more benefit people moving between jurisdictions than necessarily the property taxpayers of Boise. It's probably the same thing in any of the major arterials in and out of any of our cities. They perform a regional function, not necessarily this is a priority for this city. And so I think the devil's in the details, and we should give them the details. This is how we've prioritized resources from these pools of money over the year, and start from that. And this is how the priorities have come in this year, and we're going to try and prioritize that. I think that'd be a better narrative.
So you're proposing, so I'm understanding now. So you're proposing like similar narrative, but not obviously the same type of integrated 5-year work plan document,
right,
but it's city by city. These are the things that have gone into the said project. Regional aspects versus, more city focused type things. Okay. That could help inform this report. Okay, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, I have something to say, and it mostly has to do with perspective. Jim accurately described how priorities change. And what I watch is with our efforts to accommodate those priorities, sometimes we are absolutely blindsided, T-boned, whatever you want to call, with our efforts to make major projects happen, and especially in these smaller cities, by the efforts of the smaller cities, development, schools, or whatever, to insert their own priorities and their own permitting process into force, and it basically forces us not to be able to do our work. And the two cities that complain the most, in my opinion, about not receiving a quote fair share of this money are the ones that change their minds the most often, or put up those little roadblocks from projects of their own that prevent us from taking care of the major problems that we all agree exist.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Commissioner Gold.
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with Commissioner Hansen's comments about the narrative, and at the last time that when we were presented the information about the jurisdictional reports, Commissioner Hansen requested a list of major projects that ACHD has completed. And so, you know, to the point of that being, this being a larger transportation network countywide, I think taking that information that Director Wong subsequently provided to the commission and mapping that so that that can be provided and be a good visual aid for where those projects have been completed over time and how they benefit, you know, an adjacent community coming into their neighbor community for all kinds of different things would be helpful. And maybe we can also include the things that were mentioned earlier that are on the horizon for the next year or two in that.
Taking notes. Okay, Commissioner McKinney.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I think as we look through these jurisdictional reports, one thing is pretty clear, and this is a concept that we frequently have to remind ourselves of when we're dealing like with impact fees and so on. And it is that the impact fees get spent in a variety of places, and at any given time, what's being spent is not necessarily reflective of where the fees have come from in that most recent time period. But over time, the intent is that, you know, over time, things get evened out. And of course, if we look at these graphs that we've got here, it pretty clearly shows that for the past number of years, the revenue versus expenditures, and I'm comparing the biggest contrast is between Boise and Meridian, where we have, you know, for a substantial period of time, the expenditures in the Boise area have been lopsided in the positive direction, whereas expenditures in the Meridian area have been lopsided in the negative direction compared to, you know, where revenues are generated. And what that tells me is a couple of things, especially if we look at the, let's see, it's like the last page. The very last graph is showing what's anticipated through the year 2027. And what that's showing is that over the coming years, things are going to be lopsided in a different direction, and that's simply making up for what's happened in the past. So what I'm saying is, when we look at this information, this tells me that we should anticipate that over the next 5-6 years or so, that the given emphasis on projects in the Boise area in the most recent past years, that we should anticipate and not be concerned that there's going to be a shift in another direction. And we know some of that's coming absolutely with the improvement projects we're doing related to Highway 16 and so on, expanding some of the roads in that direction. But in any case, what we've got to do is, I think, be ready to see that, you know, you may have constituents from Boise who will ask this question: hey, why is it so lopsided? Why is the 5-year work plan for the coming 5 years so lopsided toward the western side of the county, you know, compared to what's happening in Boise? And you'll just have to tell them, because for the previous 10 years, it was lopsided in the other direction, and things are just kind of coming back around because we've got an awful lot of needs and greater growth toward other parts of the county, and that's what this is reflecting. And so I think we just need to be prepared for that and recognize that that's the reality going forward, and we've got to be willing to allow that to play out so that we meet our obligations, I think.
Commissioner Hansen.
So, yeah, Madam Chair, I think Commissioner McKinney has some good points. That's why I think it's real important that we distinguish the kind of investments that we've made and those that provided a regional basis versus those that were more, you know, Kootenai. I think you could largely argue that's the benefit of Boise residents, that neighborhood. It's a big project. It took a long time to get to it. We're just now building that. But other projects clearly were driven by the numbers of growth outside of Boise. The expansion of facilities on Cloverdale and on Cole and so forth were driven not by the growth in those neighborhoods. Those neighborhoods were pretty much already expanded out to that point. It was the demand being placed on that infrastructure from entitled new neighborhoods to the west. And so the level of service demands, which is where the way in which we prioritize and estimate what we're going to need under the CIP, says this is what we have to do because of the growth over there. So it was actually growth driven, but it was growth driven from outside of the area. And I think, you know, even the city of Boise's determination of, well, you know, even Orchard, I wonder if that's really going to serve Boise or if it's mostly largely serving CUNA. And that's a legitimate question. Maybe that's the reason why some of their priorities are shifting. But I think once you drill down, it's important to help tell that narrative. We're all in this one county together. We have different tools. We have property taxes, which everybody pays. And then we have impact fees, which development pays, but can only be spent and invested in certain areas, although property taxes have to be used to offset that. And then we get funds from other sources, the gas tax and a little bit from sales tax. But we have to figure it out all because they're all Ada County taxpayers. And I think a narrative that helps them understand that, much like it helps them understand how we have to prioritize things in the 5-year work plan, is more valuable than just simply saying, it stops benefits of infrastructure investment stops at the city limits, which it doesn't make sense. That narrative doesn't make sense. So I think people need to understand that better if we're going to do this, you know, putting out a report that we want people to help them understand and make better, provide input for us to make better decisions.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. So, Director, is it possible for us to have a narrative to accompany, say, like city-by-city reports? So, submit something to the City of Star, for example, with that narrative highlighting some of the things that we've talked about today with the various projects that have resulted in the funding that they have received.
Madam President, Commissioners, again, we greatly appreciate the conversation. This is very, very important. If I could apply a little bit of history as to the why this may help on this. I really like the idea that you just raised and what Commissioner Gold had suggested earlier when we provided that report to show where all the projects were. This was before all of your time was here. There was a time when the Ada County Highway District was accused of not being transparent. And at that time, there was a lot of discussions back and forth amongst the different elected leaders in the different cities, counties, and at the state level that were very concerned that the Ada County Highway District was not distributing dollars across the board. So at that point, what we elected to do, what the commission asked us to do, was to provide this type of report that said, fine, it's all about the numbers. Here are the numbers. And we've done that consistently for the last 12 years and such. That being said, this report may no longer provide the benefit to the cities and the county based on the changing of values, the changes of perspectives, the change of emphasis that the commission and the cities now have going forward. So again, listening to all this, the history of that was to just provide numbers here so that you know there was an equal distribution as best possible, not only during the specific year, and we've been doing this for 12 years now, but tracking that over time to show a trend as to Commissioner McKinney's and Commissioner Hanson's discussion on where the commission decided to invest based on growth patterns, and requests from different cities. And they've changed dramatically every year as we move forward. So, maybe, and it's just a recommendation based on, Commissioner Pickering, your thoughts on this, maybe, this is something that, we can evolve, and transform, because this is the year of, accelerate transformation or lose, and such, with a narrative, maybe a different type of format, and maybe a little bit more emphasis on the presentation or the report we gave you when it came down to projects versus dollars. And maybe if there is an opportunity for a question from different citizens or different mayors, we will still have all of the dollars here, so we can say, here you go. But maybe this looks a little different, and I'd like to have that opportunity to take a look at this and see if we can craft something that may better fit today's perspective versus what we've been doing at the request of the prior commission.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yeah, since I, and to another degree, we have been talking here about STAR, for instance, a prime example of where there is seen to be a tremendous need for us to be more active in STAR is Star Road itself. And Star Road itself has everything from farms on it to pizza joints to all kinds of other businesses. And it seems like, every other week we're seeing another permit for somebody to go in and tear up our road. Would it be possible, and I don't even know if this is legal, all practical things don't have to be legal, but from a practical standpoint, if the city were to decide where certain sewer, water, irrigation, electrical, fiber optic, you name it, where those connections were going to be made on either side of Star Road and stuck to that, we could develop the road. We could redo the road. We could make it into 5 lanes or whatever the CIP talks about, and create the infrastructure underground there in advance of when some of that development actually occurred, so that we wouldn't have to get tore up again. Does that make any sense whatsoever?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, as a matter of fact, that's what we do strive to do today. The challenge comes in is when, of course, there are changes. And when, as you indicated...
well, there are changes from their end, not ours.
That is a true statement.
Yeah.
And so as a matter of fact, our team will be out at STAR this Friday at, I think, 1 o'clock. To meet with the mayor over a project that they're having some concerns with. And it boils down to several things, but one of them is kind of not following your protocols as how things are developed. But I think, quite frankly, the commission can do absolutely the best they possibly can, and we're still going to have exceptions. We're still going to have those challenges. And our role will be to best mitigate that and try to make things work across the board. Because I think, as General Manning has always said, and he's just a tremendous individual, nobody cares who owns the roads. They just want them to work. And the most important road is the one that's in front of my house.
Well, and part of what I'm getting at is, what's wrong with just saying no? I mean, if someone decides they need to have a sewer line 50 feet different than what has been decided in advance of us putting $5 million into that mile, what's wrong with just saying no? You connect there. You can't connect here 50 feet over and have us tear up the road again.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, you're absolutely right. However, what I will suggest is that your staff, which is the best on the planet, tries very hard to get to yes. And sometimes we can't, and I'm probably going to come back with spears in me on Friday from STAR, because this one might be one where we're going to have to say we're sorry, or we may. Again, our focus is we try, but there are times, as you and Commissioner Hansen know, that we've said no, and we've been very supportive. The commission's been very supportive because we've given you the facts of all of the information, and we try not to get you blindsided on these. But yeah, I appreciate that, but we do try to get to yes, and sometimes it costs another dollar, and such, but at the end of the day, it may be worth that extra dollar.
So, Commissioner.
And what I'm getting at might cost us an extra dollar in advance to be able to say no, because there's a plan that's already been agreed on, and you need to keep your end of the bargain. So,
I want to get back, we'll definitely take those into consideration when we talk about Stargrove, but I don't want to get into talking about a particular project right now, so Commissioner Hanson.
Suggestion, I really appreciate that, Director. I think you're right. We need to sort of rethink this. I would advise, because our staff is working so hard on so many things, having sat through some really good Compass presentations, and recently Compass is doing this deeper dive and analysis on the impacts of growth in different parts of the valley, and clearly demands on the infrastructure we've invested in is being created by growth outside of the county as well, and it'll just continue to grow like that, is to rely on some of their analyses. The other, of course, is as you go around, Boise is now changing the way in which they're viewing their existing footprint, and we're going to see densities and shifts so that people are, well, we already see it. We've seen thousands of new residents moving into apartments, and they actually want to see this across the board, so it's not just large apartment complexes in a few areas, but ADUs all spread out. So the growth patterns are going to change, and so what does that mean for the tax base within the county? So I would encourage you have Compass sort of take the lead on this, do that analysis, and then come back and see this is how the jurisdictions within Ada County are impacted by these kinds of trends and past investments and anticipated future investments.
Director, I think you've got a good sense of where we need to go from here, and I just want to say too that I think many of you have already mentioned this, but I just want to emphasize it that the balance of regional versus hyper-local projects, I think, is very real. And at our last meeting, at several joint meetings that we've had with our cities, they've talked about that complicated nuance that we have to dance all day long, right? So I think that there is this respect that there are these decisions that we have to make. And I think that just needs to be spelled out as generally or eloquently as possible. But then also, and this is not going to be reflected in the report, but I just want to state it for the record, that these cities also have tremendous amount of impact over, these are also their roads. Their growth pattern designs and predicts what roads look like in those cities. And if they're not also bringing in commercial development, businesses, right, that balance of regional projects versus hyperlocal can get out of whack because their folks that live there are having to go everywhere else, right, rather than stay in their own communities. So I think that inherently there's a lot of this that is on themselves, that they need to take a hard look at these numbers as well and say, well, how can we get more of this monies into our community that reflects what our existing neighborhoods want? And I think it comes down to looking at holistically the health of their cities and the transportation patterns of those cities. So again, that doesn't need to be reflected in the report, but I just want to make that known. So commissioners, I think we've got some good direction, and if there's no other comments, you have anything, Commissioner Gold?
Thanks, Madam President. I was just going to say, echo what you're saying, that's just a really good point and absolutely true. And as our area has grown so much, there's been a change to the demand on our network, and also the type, scale, and cost of the projects have changed too. And so I just think that is part of the larger story, and how we interact within that network is an important piece of it. So
thank you. And yes, tremendous work by our staff that do these reports, and sometimes just the numbers isn't enough, and we'll work on that narrative. So thank you. And with that, we are done for the day. We'll see you next week.